Let's talk more about today's market movements with Wayne McCurrie from FNB Wealth and Investments. Thank you for joining us, Wayne. It's not just the JSE, but global markets that are down. Explain to us why investors are so cautious over these debt ceiling costs in the US. Is this the main reason the markets are in the red?
It certainly is one of the reasons. What investors hate the most is uncertainty. So if you knew the US was going to default, you'll make a plan. And if you knew they were going to increase the debt ceiling, which of course they will, I mean, there's no question about that, then the uncertainty is removed. But markets are a little bit weaker globally on the back of this. But, sometimes markets have had quite a strong rally over the last while. Some weakness is not untoward. It's not that unusual. Certainly on the debt ceiling, this is just politics. So one of the parties will blink first because there is no ways they're going to default. This happens every, 5 or 6 years or so, and it's the same story every single time. The two parties are at loggerheads until 1 minute to 12, and then somehow they reach an agreement because no party wants fingers pointed at it in the electorate's eye that they caused a default by the US government.
So, Wayne, we received predictions this week that we would get a fuel price cut despite the weak rand because of a low oil price. But it looks like oil prices are rising now.
Yes, they are a little bit. I must say, I'm not too sure about a rand cut, because when you look at Brent crude, we all know what's happened to the rand since Lady R docked here. And when you look over the last 30 days on Brent crude, it is down slightly. But let's hope it does happen, because certainly we need every protection against imported inflation because of what's happened to the rand. I suppose we were used to the 1820, 1830 level, but the 1920, 1930 level, it's just that jump much weaker. And that affects virtually everything in South Africa, because most of the stuff we consume here, our food, everything is actually based on the price of the imported product. So it's never good news for inflation when the rand collapses like it has now. And unfortunately, when the Reserve Bank meets this week, they're going to increase interest rates again to try and give the rand some strength. They've got no option.
Yes, and we are awaiting the inflation numbers tomorrow. But we had very sobering results presentation from Astral Foods yesterday, where it showed how infrastructure failures had caused its profits to slump. How vulnerable are other SA stocks to these risks?
Probably not quite as vulnerable as Astral, because Astral, their broilers and their production facilities aren't in big metropoles per se. They're reasonably close, but they're normally out in smaller, let's call it semi-rural towns. So a lot of the big companies listed on the stock market are in municipalities that probably do function a lot better than the smaller places. But it's just a reflection, I suppose, generally on life in the smaller towns. The towns that Astral and quite a few other companies are in, they're the biggest employer there by far, but they want to leave because they're not getting services and they don't get water and the roads are terrible. So it's actually a very poor reflection on South Africa and the state of governance in South Africa that Astral's got to come out and say, load shedding, infrastructure, service delivery in these small towns we've got to do it ourselves, essentially.
Coronation fund managers reported a huge drop in profit, partly owing to its tax dispute with SARS. But despite that and the fact that the dividend has been withheld, the stock was trading 5% higher. Why?
Yes. Look, the share price has come off enormously over the last 6 months. It's fallen from 55 Rand to 30 Rand. So it's effectively halved. And that's very unusual for a company like Coronation. Normally it's a fairly reliable earning company. What happened was they had a tax dispute with SARS, and they won the first court case. The court ruled in favor of Coronation. Then the second court case ruled in favor of SARS, and they had to make a provision for R1 billion extra tax revenue. But Coronation's taking this on appeal, so who knows what the actual result will be. But certainly, even if the appeal case ruled in favor of SARS, all the bad news is already in the share price here. And I think that's why the share price is up today. It's at really, really low levels. I mean, we haven't seen a level like this for Coronation in a very long time. In fact, I don't think we've seen it in the last 5 or 6 years. And this is a good company that's been around for a long time. So I think there was some bargain hunting today that pushed the share price up.
Wayne, lastly, and I know we've already spoken about this, but the Rand, any chance of recovery there? Any good news?
Yes. Fantastic chance of recovery. Just got to wait a while. So on a three, look, the Rand does this. The Rand collapses. We all want to throw our toys. Nothing's going to ever work. The Rand's on a one-way trip. It's absolutely useless. It's been destroyed. This happens quite regularly. It happens about every 5 or 6 years. And it's to do with the commodity cycle. So we've had a big fall in commodity prices, and the Rand always weakens. This time it's exacerbated by domestic political events. But the Rand's doing what the Rand normally does. It falls in a commodity down cycle. Now, if we have any luck, there'll be a commodity up cycle over the next 3 to 5 years. So within the next 3 years, I would say the Rand's going to strengthen and strengthen quite significantly. It could easily go back to below 17 or maybe even 16.50 against the dollar. But in the shorter term, it could even go weaker. So I've got no good news short term, but I've got actually quite confident about the Rand strengthening over the medium term.
On that optimistic long-term note, thank you so much, Wayne. That was Wayne McCurrie from FNB Wealth and Investments.